The grand convocation hall of the Zalosian hegemony was a testament to a billion years of stability, a cavern of polished obsidian and living crystal that pulsed with the soft, internal light of a captured star. Its vaulted ceilings soared into engineered nebulae, swirling with the silent, cosmic dust of forgotten galaxies. Here, gravity was a negotiated treaty, and the air itself was a historical document, recycled and filtered through archives of scented flora from 1,000 conquered worlds. Seated upon thrones of solidified light, arranged in a descending spiral that centered on a shimmering dais of pure energy, were the delegates of the Galactic Council. They were a menagerie of ancient and powerful races, the crystalline Cathar, whose thoughts echoed as chimes in the psionically charged atmosphere, the insectoid Hivani, their carapaces adorned with the sigils of their many-queened hives, and the amorphous, ever-shifting form of the cephaloid emissary, its gelatinous body a canvas for the swirling emotions of its collective consciousness. At the heart of it all, enthroned above the rest, was the Zalosian Archon, a being of immense age and gravitas, its form a towering, arboreal majesty of interwoven bioluminescent wood and sinew. An unnerving silence, thick with unspoken anxieties, pressed down upon the assembly. It was a silence that spoke of a crisis so profound that it had muted the usual cacophony of diplomatic posturing and political maneuvering. The subject of this silent dread was a race of bipedal mammals from a distant, unassuming star system, a species that called themselves humans. The Archon's voice, a resonant hum that vibrated through the very structure of the hall, finally broke the stillness. The reports from the Vale of Perseus have been verified by multiple independent sensor readings. The wreckage of the Grand Cruiser Vindicator has been analyzed. A ripple of disquiet flowed through the assembled delegates. The Cathar chimed in a discordant chorus of alarm, their crystalline forms vibrating with agitation. The Hivani emissary's mandibles clicked a rapid, staccato rhythm of distress. The cephaloid's surface swirled with a chaotic maelstrom of dark, troubled colors. The Vindicator was no mere vessel. It was a symbol of the hegemony's might, a fortress-class warship forged from the rarest and most resilient alloys known to the galaxy. It was considered indestructible, a testament to the Zalosians' mastery over the physical universe. To hear of its destruction was akin to hearing that a star had simply ceased to be. Destruction is an inadequate descriptor, the Archon continued, its voice heavy with a weariness that transcended millennia. The ship has been transformed, mutated. The very metal of its hull has become something else entirely, something alive. The Archon gestured, and a colossal holographic display shimmered into existence above the central dais. The image was sickening, a grotesque perversion of Zalosian engineering. The sleek, majestic lines of the Vindicator were gone, replaced by a twisted, organic nightmare. The hull was a lattice of jagged, crystalline growths, pulsing with a faint, crimson light. Tendrils of what looked like metallic flesh snaked through the wreckage, and the ship's powerful energy core, once a beacon of controlled fusion, was now a throbbing, organic heart. A senior Cathar delegate, its crystalline facets shimmering with barely controlled fear, projected its thoughts into the chamber. The logs! What did the ship's logs say before this? The Archon's gaze turned towards the Cathar, its ancient eyes glowing with a somber light. The final transmission was fragmented, a security recording from the main bridge. It showed a human, a single human brought aboard for interrogation. The holographic display shifted, showing a grainy, chaotic scene. A human, clad in the simple uniform of a Terran merchant vessel, was surrounded by a contingent of Zalosian Praetorian guards. The human was bleeding from a minor wound on its arm, a trickle of red fluid staining the deck plates. The recording was short, a mere few seconds of chaos before it cut out. A Praetorian guard, its metallic form towering over the human, had struck the captive. The human stumbled, its hand brushing against a bulkhead. The moment the red fluid, the human's blood, made contact with the ship's hull, the recording devolved into a storm of static and corrupted data. The Hivani emissary's clicks became more agitated. The reports from our xenobiologists are inconclusive. They speak of a biological agent of unprecedented virulence, a prion, a virus, something that rewrites matter at a molecular level. The cephaloid delegate's form rippled with a wave of deep violet, a color that signified a profound and existential dread. It projected a single, powerful thought that resonated in the minds of everyone present. A weapon. They have turned their very biology into a we. Pawn, the implication hung in the air, a chilling miasma of fear. A species whose very lifeblood could unravel the most advanced technology in the galaxy. A species that could turn a warship into a monstrous, living thing was a threat beyond any they had ever conceived. The debate that followed was a storm of fear and speculation. The more militaristic factions, led by the stern and unyielding Praetorian commander, called for an immediate and overwhelming response. "We must strike now, before they can unleash this plague upon us," the commander's amplified voice boomed through the hall. "A full-scale orbital bombardment of their home world. We will sterilize their planet, erase them from existence before they can become an even greater threat." Others, the more cautious and diplomatic voices, urged restraint. The Cathar, a species of philosophers and scientists, cautioned against a hasty and violent reaction. "We do not yet understand what we are dealing with. This phenomenon could be an accident, an unforeseen reaction. To respond with genocide would be an act of barbarism, a betrayal of the very principles upon which this council was founded." The Archon listened to the clamor, its ancient mind a silent vortex of thought. The Zalosians were a species that had long since transcended the need for biological forms. They had become beings of pure energy, their consciousnesses housed within intricate arboreal shells. They viewed biology as a primitive, messy affair, a relic of a bygone era. And yet this primitive, messy biology of the humans now threatened to undo 1 billion years of their carefully constructed order. The Archon had studied the humans from a distance for some time. They were a young species, barely out of their planetary cradle, their technology a clumsy and inefficient imitation of the hegemony's own. They were considered a minor, insignificant race, a curiosity to be observed and catalogued. Now they were the center of a galactic crisis, their name whispered in fear and awe in the highest echelons of power. The Archon raised a hand, and a wave of silencing energy washed over the chamber. The clamor died down, replaced once again by a tense and expectant silence. "We will not resort to barbarism," the Archon's voice was firm, resolute. "We will not be ruled by fear. We will seek to understand. We will send a delegation. We will open a dialogue with the humans. We will learn the truth of what happened to the Vindicator." A murmur of dissent rippled through the more hawkish members of the council, but the Archon's authority was absolute. The decision was made. A fleet of diplomatic vessels, escorted by a formidable contingent of warships, would be dispatched to the humans' home system. They would approach with caution, with a message of peace, but they would be prepared for the worst. The fate of the galaxy, it seemed, now rested on a conversation with a species that had, in a single, terrifying instant, redefined the very nature of power. As the Zalosian fleet, a breathtaking armada of ships that shimmered like 1,000 scattered jewels against the black velvet of space, translated from hyperspace into the Sol system, they were met with a profound and unnerving silence. The system was quiet. There were no defensive platforms, no orbital fortresses, no fleets of warships massing to meet them. There was only the serene and beautiful blue marble of Earth, a world that seemed oblivious to the momentous and potentially cataclysmic events that were about to unfold. The lead Zalosian vessel, the diplomatic cruiser Serenity, a ship of breathtaking beauty and grace, its hull a seamless expanse of pearlescent white, hailed the human home world. The response was prompt, almost unnervingly so. A calm, measured voice, speaking in the flawless, unaccented trade language of the Galactic Council, responded to their hail. "This is Earth Orbital Control. We receive you, Zalosian delegation. Welcome to the Sol system. We have been expecting you." The Zalosian ambassador, a being of immense age and wisdom named Lyra, felt a chill crawl up her arboreal spine. "Expecting us?" Lyra's voice was a soft, melodic hum, but it was laced with a thread of suspicion. "How could you have known we were coming?" The human voice on the other end of the comm channel was a model of calm and professional detachment. "The incident with your vessel, the Vindicator, was a matter of grave concern to us. We anticipated that you would seek clarification. We are prepared to offer it." Lyra was taken aback by the human's frankness. There was no denial, no prevarication, no attempt to feign ignorance. They admitted to their involvement in the Vindicator's fate, and they did so with a calmness that was both disarming and deeply unsettling. The human delegation that came aboard the Serenity was a small, unassuming group. There were 3 of them, 2 males and a female, all clad in simple, dark blue uniforms that bore the insignia of something called the Terran Diplomatic Corps. They were small, frail-looking. Their skin was soft and unarmored, their bodies lacking the natural defenses of most of the Council races. They were escorted by a single Zalosian Praetorian guard, a towering behemoth of polished chrome and glowing energy conduits, and the contrast was almost comical. The Praetorian's presence was a not-so-subtle reminder of the Zalosians' military might, a silent threat that hung in the air. The humans seemed unimpressed. They moved with a quiet confidence, their eyes taking in the grandeur of the Xylosian vessel with a detached curiosity. The meeting took place in the Serenity's main conference chamber, a room designed to inspire awe. The walls were made of a living, transparent crystal that offered a breathtaking panoramic view of the Earth, a swirling vortex of blue, white, and green against the infinite black of space. The conference table was a single, massive slab of polished obsidian, and the chairs were sculpted from a rare, anti-gravity wood that floated a few inches above the floor. The human delegation sat on one side of the table, their faces impassive, their posture relaxed. Lyra and her retinue of Xylosian diplomats sat on the other, their arboreal forms rigid with a mixture of apprehension and curiosity. "We are here to discuss the fate of the Grand Cruiser Vindicator," Lyra began, her voice a carefully modulated tone of diplomatic formality, "and the human who was brought aboard for questioning." The female human, the leader of the delegation, a woman with intelligent, dark eyes and a calm, composed demeanor, nodded slowly. "His name was Elias Vance. He was a civilian merchant, a good man, and he is dead." There was no anger in her voice, no accusation, just a simple statement of fact. Lyra was taken aback. We regret the loss of life," she said, the words feeling hollow and inadequate. The human woman, whose name was Ambassador Chen, simply inclined her head in a gesture of acknowledgement. "We have reviewed the logs from the Vindicator," Chen continued, her voice even and steady. "We know what happened. Your Praetorian guards in their zeal struck Mr. Vance. He was injured. His blood came into contact with the ship's hull." A tense silence descended upon the room. The Xylosians waited for the other shoe to drop, for the veiled threat, the demand for reparations, the declaration of war. It never came. Instead, Chen continued, "What you witnessed was not a weapon. It was a biological imperative, a defense mechanism, something that is an intrinsic part of our genetic makeup." Lyra was stunned into silence. A defense mechanism? What kind of species evolved a defense mechanism that could turn a warship into a living, breathing monster? The Xylosian xenobiologists had speculated about such a thing, but their theories had been dismissed as far-fetched, as a paranoid fantasy. And yet, here was a human, a high-ranking diplomat, calmly and rationally confirming their worst fears. "Allow me to explain," Chen said, her voice taking on a more pedagogical tone. "Our species evolved on a world that was hostile. We were not the strongest, not the fastest, not the most resilient. We had to adapt. We had to find other ways to survive, and one of those ways was through our biology. Our blood, when exposed to certain catalysts, can trigger a process of rapid, uncontrolled cellular growth, a kind of hypercancer. In most cases, this is a fatal condition. But in the case of your ship's hull, the catalyst was the unique metallic alloy you use. An alloy that is, on a molecular level, remarkably similar to our own bone structure." A wave of understanding and a new, more profound sense of dread washed over Lyra. The Vindicator's hull was not just metal. It was a biometal, a complex lattice of organic and inorganic compounds that was designed to be self-repairing, to be alive. And the human's blood had awakened it. It had triggered a runaway evolutionary process, turning the ship into a grotesque parody of life. "The process is unpredictable," Chen continued, her voice still calm, still measured. "It is not something we can control. It is a force of nature, a biological imperative that has been dormant in our genes for millennia. We are as much a victim of it as you are." The implications of Chen's words were staggering. The humans were not a race of warmongers who had weaponized their own biology. They were a species that carried within them a terrifying, dormant power, a power they themselves did not fully understand or control. They were a walking, talking biological time bomb. The talks continued for days. The humans were open, transparent, and unnervingly honest. They shared their scientific data, their genetic research, their philosophical treatises on the nature of life and evolution. They were a species that had looked into the abyss of their own biology and had not flinched. They had accepted the terrifying truth of their own nature, and they were trying to find a way to live with it. The Xylosians, for their part, were forced to confront their own prejudices, their own arrogance. They had always viewed biology as a primitive, messy affair. Now they were faced with a species whose biology was a force of nature, a power that could rival their own advanced technology. The turning point came when Chen made an offer. "We want to help you," she said, her voice filled with a quiet sincerity. "We want to help you understand what happened to the Vindicator. We want to help you find a way to reverse the process." The Xylosians were skeptical. Why would the humans help them? What did they have to gain? Chen's answer was simple, and it was devastating in its profound and unexpected humanity. Because we do not want to be a weapon, we do not want to be feared. We want to be partners, we want to be friends. The offer was a gamble, a leap of faith into the unknown. But the Zalosians, faced with a threat they could not comprehend, a power they could not control, had no other choice. They accepted the humans' offer. A joint scientific expedition was dispatched to the Vale of Perseus, to the twisted, organic wreckage of the Vindicator. The team was composed of the best and brightest minds from both species, a collection of xenobiologists, metallurgists, and quantum physicists. They were an unlikely alliance, a meeting of two vastly different cultures, two vastly different ways of looking at the universe. The wreckage of the Vindicator was a sight that defied description. It was a cathedral of corrupted flesh and twisted metal, a monument to a biological imperative that had run amok. The human scientists, with their deep understanding of their own biology, were able to identify the catalyst, the specific molecular trigger that had initiated the transformation. The Zalosian scientists, with their mastery of advanced technology, were able to devise a counteragent, a way to reverse the process. It was a slow, arduous process, a delicate dance of science and diplomacy, but it worked. Slowly, painstakingly, the Vindicator was returned to its original form. The twisted, organic growths receded, the pulsating, crimson light faded, and the ship's sleek, majestic lines were restored. The successful restoration of the Vindicator was a turning point in the relationship between the humans and the Zalosians. Fear gave way to respect, suspicion to trust. The two species, once on the brink of a devastating war, had found common ground. They had learned that they were not so different after all. They were both children of the cosmos, both struggling to understand their place in the universe. In the aftermath of the Vindicator crisis, a new era of cooperation and understanding dawned in the galaxy. The humans, once an insignificant, backwater species, were now a major galactic power, their voice respected in the highest echelons of the Galactic Council. The Zalosians, once a proud and arrogant empire, had learned a valuable lesson in humility. They had learned that true power was not measured in fleets of warships or in technological superiority, but in the ability to understand, to empathize, and to forgive. And so, a new alliance was forged, an alliance between the ancient and the young, between the technological and the biological, between the beings of energy and the beings of flesh and blood. It was an alliance that would change the course of galactic history, an alliance that would usher in a new age of peace and prosperity. But the story does not end there. For in the process of studying the humans' unique biology, in the process of unraveling the secrets of their blood, the Zalosian scientists made a discovery so profound, so earth-shattering, that it would once again redefine the very nature of the universe. Deep within the human genome, buried in the so-called junk DNA that had long been a mystery to human scientists, the Zalosians found a message that was not of human origin, a message that was billions of years old. It was a message from a long-vanished precursor race, a race of beings of unimaginable power and wisdom, a race that had, it seemed, seeded the galaxy with life. The message was a warning of a coming darkness, of an ancient and terrible foe that was slowly awakening from its long slumber at the edge of the universe. A foe that had once consumed entire galaxies, a foe that was now turning its hungry gaze towards their own. And the message contained one final, chilling revelation. The unique properties of human blood, the terrifying, dormant power that had almost sparked a galactic war, was not a defense mechanism. It was a key that was meant to unlock a weapon of last resort, a weapon of unimaginable power, a weapon that had been hidden away for eons, waiting for the day when it would be needed again. A weapon that was, according to the message, located in a place that was both familiar and terrifyingly alien. A place that was, the message revealed, the true origin of all life in the galaxy, the Earth itself. The Earth, the beautiful, serene blue marble that had been the cradle of humanity, was not a planet. It was a ship. A dormant, world-sized warship of unimaginable power, a relic of a long-forgotten war, a final, desperate gambit by a race of beings who had sacrificed themselves to save the galaxy from a darkness that was now, it seemed, returning. And the humans, the children of Earth, were the only ones who held the key to awakening it. They were the only ones who could save the galaxy from the coming storm. The children of Earth, the accidental weapons, were now the galaxy's last and only hope. The age of peace had been short-lived. A new, more terrible war was coming. And this time, the fate of not just the galaxy, but of all life in the universe would rest on the shoulders of a small, frail species from a distant, unassuming star system. A species that had, against all odds, proven that the true measure of a civilization was not in its technology, but in its heart. And the heart of humanity, it seemed, was about to be tested in a fire that would consume the very stars themselves. The era of humanity had truly begun.